Hello and welcome to Clawful Evil Probable Claws, a show where we discuss Wildbow's most well-groomed work. I'm your very villainous hostess, Vice Versailles.
And I am your conniving hostess, Kippos. In this debriefing, we're covering Chapter 6 of Arc 5, The Quick.
And what a chapter.
Oh my god, what a chapter. It was pretty brutal. I definitely wasn't expecting a Valentina perspective again. But I'm, happy that we got it.
This chapter really put me in the mind of like a graphic novel or like a Phoenix Wright like click through game where like just Val was like constantly walking between the few rooms in the house, talking with NPCs, getting little bits of evidence and ideas. She goes back to Addie's room, clicks on some other things. You know, she it's a real puzzle of a chapter that is circling around the big reveal at the end.
Yeah.
There was this moment where, in trying to remember this chapter, I thought that the only thing that really happened was that the reveal with what happened to Addie, and then as dwelling on the thought, trying to remember what else happened, it just kept going because there's layers upon layers upon layers between these, getting to know the kids a bit better, getting like these insights with Carson and Valentina and that like strange parentage there. The spiral that Tony goes through. It's really densely packed, and it's all so well constructed around this central reveal.
Yeah, like when I did my live read, I didn't pull out that much that happened. I was like really engrossed in it. So like when I went back to do my second read and take notes, I was like, I don't know how many notes I'm going to take here. And then I ended up taking about a page and a quarter, which is a relatively large amount. I normally stick to about a page per chapter, but this one was, a page and 3/4. It was like a lot. It was a lot of notes for this chapter.
I do find it interesting that as like the story has gone on, obviously Wildbow changed to a chapter a week schedule instead of 2 chapters, but our episodes have stayed about the same length.
I remember that happening to Pale Reflections as well. So
because we really are getting like the same quantity and quality just in one place. I mean, page and a half of notes for 2 chapters now bringing into one. I'm really excited to get into it.
Yeah, so shall we do today's chapter summary?
In 5.6, Moses is driving Valentina to a playdate with the kids. Jermaine gets her a bit hot under the collar before he reveals how he poured boiling sugar on his dad, and Mia interrogates Tony Arcuri about ways to blackmail Davy, except everything he does qualifies, and none of it matters anymore. Carson assures Valentina that all these changes she's going through are perfectly normal, while Ben takes credit for her character development. Between catching Addie's strays and rooting around her room for clues, Valentina asks Julito and Kenny to drop the gay bomb topic, has a heart-to-heart with Michelle about lucidity, self-control, and cunt punting, and eventually finds the email chain that blows the case wide open. Davy has been grooming Addie into the same sort of monster he is. Realizing that his actions have consequences, Tony turns on Davy and willingly helps the Hursts. When Mia gets a transmission, Ripley is in the vents.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just brilliant chapter all around. So shall we do our status report on our last week's BS predictions?
So I thought that Ripley would elect to save Natalie when she could have escaped on her own, causing both to be recaptured. And Ripley does seem to have gone for a complex play. She's gone into the walls, she's in the vents, as opposed to immediately fleeing the scene. So as far as it being a protracted siege, we certainly seem to be buckling up for that.
Yeah, and look, it could still happen.
That is our eternal chant for BS predictions, you know? It's a sort of constipation, if you would. You know, we have this real backlog of BS predictions, and things could all come to a head at any moment.
I'm sure a lot of them have been debunked, but I mean, there are still some there.
Here's how Highland can still win.
Yeah, here's how Sax could still be canon.
I'll write it
So
myself. I'll write it
my
myself.
my last week's prediction was that they've snuck Ryder in as one of the police hanging outside, and he's going to go bold on their asses and swoop in to rescue the girls. And I'm very, very ashamed to say that that is not true.
He's right
Ryder
here.
He's
just hanging out
right here. Yeah, which is a shame. I guess Wildbow just really likes to shoot down my predictions.
Yeah, it's crazy how in this very tightly planned story, Wildbow could take time out of his busy schedule to specifically debunk our notions, which is really think is really sweet. It's
nice.
In the words of Addie, it's being done for me specifically. But
exactly.
I mean, the center of this puzzle, Addie, I think, before we get into beat by beat, Sangachi said it when we had Valentina's interrogation arc episode, that the torture of Addie couldn't possibly have produced information outside of what Highland said, which is like it was information that Addie wanted to divulge, or felt was necessary, some balance thereof.
Thought that Valentina wanted to hear.
Yeah. It couldn't be couldn't be verifiable fact, because that's not how torture works, or rather doesn't work. And here's the payoff of that suspicion. Sure, Addie loves yelling horrible things and accusing people of all sorts and taking credit for evil and wrongdoing, because that's what she's been shaped to do.
I think there's like this thing that has happened here where, so like we can kind of almost take Addie at her word for the first initial meeting about like the bullying of Geo, because like Tony kind of backs it up there. And it's really like later that, Addie's story basically falls apart, of like where she said she didn't, necessarily like want to do it. It was like all Davy, but obviously we see like it was started by Davy, but she was clearly very into it and very much enjoyed it. Hence why after getting that hint of power, she then reached out to Davy like a while later, saying like, I'm bored. When he gives her, a new target as another test.
Yeah.
And then the grooming really starts.
Well, what I got really caught on was that Davy's messages are so short. I'm not sure if that's like precisely because like that's how they're written, or like they're excerpts. But that they're often these sort of backhanded instructions of like, you do whatever you want, or like, I'd like to see what you come up with, And the essence I got there was like, he's not trying. Dave, this is an idle curiosity for Davy, and from it, Addie has like what she believes she's fallen absolutely in love. And
it's it's heartbreaking. Like, poor fucking kid. Like,
the thing. Okay, so I think it's as far as this topic goes, it's a weird thing to have had a lot of thought put into. So I'd like to just clarify that when people in the news are throwing around accusations of you being a sort of criminal, you might educate yourself as to what the crime is so that you can prevent it and not partake in it. And I happen to have, over the years, had to look after siblings that are younger than me and much more online than I am, which is saying something because I'm very online. And, like I'm off the top of my head, one of the kids is on Roblox. And if you know about that, you know about the whole fiasco there. But the that caught me with Addie specifically is that as we followed Valentina, we know the consequences of her being bullied are that she has had her connections decimated. She's like no community. She becomes very vulnerable, and she reaches out to people in the only way that she can think of, that is, say, she petitions a lot of people. And Addie is the source of that pain. But then we look at the reciprocal to that. Addie has inflicted this sort of devastation on now multiple people, carrying that sort of essential blackmail with her, and is having all of these really shallow relationships where like she's like popular, and it's mostly seems to be a money and status and like presence thing, where there's not a lot of like, essential like knows you personally relationships.
Well, I mean, it's like Valentina kind of picked up on like from her like princess room. Like, there's no substance there. It's like it's the classics because they're classic, like the books, and it's the school books.
Yeah,
like there's no.
Her internal world is not grounded in her room, and her personality isn't really expressed in that area. And as far as someone being made vulnerable to grooming, if you don't have any those really substantial connections where you can there's this sort of image as part of that that sort of shell that you were pointing out, the princess, the classics, the school books, the default. That is a state of real vulnerability, because like there's no one to check in on a level where if you say I'm fine, they won't just take that as an answer. Or if you don't just go with the flow or read the script, they won't read in a little deeper. So Addie in the same way that Gio has been intentionally isolated, Addie is in a isolated state that sort of has this facade of normalcy around it. And as far as like Davy being able to affect her in this way, the spark on the fuse being I'm bored is so profane. It's awful, because like she had so little of that connection and that like real validating experience or like self-expression, or like growing up and like being among peers and people that you really care about, that closeness, that she reached out to Davy to try and make that happen more.
And it's
it's a dependence. She doesn't know where to get it from, so she goes looking for it in a dark place.
Well, like because there's this moment again where like Valentina's looking at the walls and noting like, oh, here is Addie with like photos of like a bunch of people that aren't part of the family. Like she doesn't have that like isolation, but at the same time, like she does, like she can't relate to someone outside of the family because they're not in the like organized crime. Like they don't get the organized crime and what's happening there. And she can't really relate to people in the family because she's not family.
She's between, And it's interesting.
She is stuck between the worlds.
It's interesting how Valentina has to translate what she's seeing. Because there's this moment of envy where she sees, oh, you have something that I don't have. You have these broader connections to other people. And then has to recognize that Addie doesn't, just because Addie has those things doesn't mean that Addie values those things. Just because Addie has access to these things doesn't mean they value her in turn.
Absolutely.
Translating the the fact of difference into like a reality that is not superior, like recognizing the grass isn't necessarily greener on the other side just because there are different plants, it's a triumph of empathy. By the end of the chapter, the thing that Valentina has achieved is so much more powerful than just attacking Addie's face. She has reached past Addie's face to like the core of what has made her this way and actually understood her. And so that moment at the very end where Addie is like a broken record, just attacking Valentina, and it washes off like water off a duck's back. She just says, "He groomed you," because she solved it, and all of her venom is just, it's like an antidote. It no longer affects her. So a marvelous and horrible catharsis there.
Yeah. I mean, it's an emotionally intense chapter. This one, it's like no action scenes really, just a lot of Jesus Christ, like
Yeah.
ugh.
A whole church of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Should we get into our beat by beats?
Gladly.
So there's a moment early where I've pulled the quote of "I don't belong to him. I don't think I got anything from him. He mostly ignored me, except to treat me like shit. Fuck him." From Valentina's like talking about Davy, and it's like, Valentina, so you've talked about like that darkness that you got from him. Like, I get that you're like distancing yourself from it, and from what you did to Addie, but like, it feels like she's trying just to not acknowledge it at this point. Where, yeah, like, because I mean, just a few chapters ago, she was saying like, the thing I learned from Davy was like the darkness. I thought that was interesting that she's just like completely, like, almost disassociated herself from that entire like part of her life in this moment.
It's this odd like half step where she is rejecting what Davy had given her, which she had previously been planning to internalize, but hasn't really synthesized it yet into a stance where she can accept that it is the case, that he is her father, and that there is some things that she's picked up. So like she's in this like first step before like a synthesis and acceptance of just like denial and rejection to try and bring distance to then make that kind of conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, like, for example, like, I would say, like, I got my anger from my father, but I am not an angry person. I've, like, very intentionally distanced myself from it. But, like, I inherited that down, and I have then made steps to move away from it. Like, I wouldn't say I got nothing, from that. I would say, like, that's something that I have, internalized and then dealt with and now moved on from. I would never say that, like, I'd never got anything. Like, I don't know. I think it's just, like, the stage of healing, I guess. And so there's a great moment in the car where Moses is like, I don't think it's important, like being a badass. And it's like, holy fuck, thank you, Moses. Like, there needed to be an adult in this conversation. And I'm so glad he's there to say it because, like, it's not important. It's like, it's a, chest beating kind of 17-year-old kid, like 17-year-old boy thing to be like, oh, I'm so badass. And it's like, I don't know, like, like, grow up.
it's that thing of like, there's not much else to brag about. So if you like, if you go without it, if you don't identify with what's happened to you, what's left over to identify with?
Yeah. And it's, like he's trying to say that Valentina is a badass for torturing Addie, but yeah, there was nothing badass there. It was horrible. And like, she disassociated her way through the violence. Like, yeah, there's no badassery. There's just pain. And thank God Moses is there. And even like, because like, obviously he has his own troubles in his life, but even through them, at least he can recognize that like hurting people isn't badass. It's just, it's nothing. Like, it's not a good thing to aspire to. And then, so then there's a moment where poor Valentina is like watching Jermaine in the backseat and just like basically just getting turned on. And like, he like tugged on some string in her belly that was attached to groin and heart. And it's like, oh my God, hon, like, poor teenage girl.
I like the
hormones suck sometimes.
I like the self-awareness of like appealed in a dangerous way.
Yes,
and that like it comes up later with Carson calling her out for it. And in a very kind way. It's not someone we'd approve of. Like, just letting you know. And
then she's like, "Oh, I wouldn't." And then he's kind of like gives her a look, and it's like,
"Would you though? Would you though?" Like
but then she's really like self-aware, and she goes, "Look, like, I am attracted to him, but I have a brain. Like, there is a part of me that desires that, but it's not like, I know it wouldn't be good for me, and I'm not going to like even try and walk down that path, which is really, really good.
When people talk about like stages of development, and like accusing teenagers of having like being ruled by their hormones because they have undeveloped like frontal lobes, like the idea that your brain's just not strong enough to control yourself. This kind of interplay, I think, like puts forward a counterpoint to that of like you just like what's your support network, what's your culpability, how honest can you be with yourself about your feelings, and like there's this real skill element to how you interpret like what your body is telling you. Obviously all those things depend on experience and having learned those skills, but they're not necessarily dependent on like this thing of maturity of like actually having developed that far, because usually it's used as a excuse of like, well, that person can be forgiven because they don't have that much time to have developed these things. Whereas Valentina is taking that effort in, and she's like finding a community where she can pick those skills up. So it's nice because like the feelings don't go away. The way that they're processed and the way you become culpable for them because you're able to like qualify, choose to act on them. It's kind of like quintessentially teenage to see. But I think like the way that it goes is a really like healthy thing to witness for anyone.
Yeah. I think that's the case. Yeah. And then so she's thinking about like cutting up Addie, and the memory of that scene flashed through her mind. Was there ever going to be a day when it didn't? Should there be? And it's like, I like that she added the last question, because the answer is no. Like, you have to live with what you've done. And you have to try and make amends for it, which I guess is what she has done, like, at the end of this chapter here. But yeah, I think it's something that should sit on her mind for a long fucking time, that she had the capability to take a fucking box cutter knife to someone's face and neck. It's not a light moment, and it's not something that is just like, oh yeah, that's a thing, but I mean, I won't do it again, so it's fine. It's like, no, like, you need to be conscious of that shit. You need to be aware of the kinds of things that you are capable of, so that you can be very careful with how you live your life, such that you do not get into a situation where you are likely to do that kind of thing again. Which, like we talked about the other week, when like she refused to, like, she didn't go in the van with Addie again. And like, that is her like distancing herself from it, which is really good. And she should be doing that. And part of distancing herself from it is having it sit in her mind.
But at the same time, you know, like trauma and memory, that like as essential, and like possibly even the same thing, and how you might like describe their function. But like this being unprocessed and like right at the head of her mind as something that is not resolved and not incorporated into how she functions yet. I think like this chapter goes a long way to sort of like let the spirit rest, as it were, and like resolve the reason that the record is scratching in her own head of like, why did I do that? What was it for? All these questions of value comparison still running through her head, because that's what happened with trauma. Like and when you do something that you really regret is like unresolved, and like the how and the why having been done or done to, it's still echoing in her head. Yeah, absolutely. Right, so I guess I did kind of skip over the fact that Jermaine like maimed his dad in this really horrible way, and like Valentina brings up like the fact that he lost a leg, like he lost his cock and balls, I think was the way they put it, which is just like a very 17-year-old way to say that. Anyway, so yeah, Jermaine says, I won, beat him. And then Moses replies, your dad lost anyway. And it's like, thank you again, like, thank you, Moses, for being the adult in this situation. Like
like Jermaine's hasn't grown from this experience at all. He's just like, this dude hurt me and I hurt him back, therefore I beat him. Like he's so, yeah, like he just hasn't processed like the damage that's been done and the trauma that's been done, and is just thinking, yeah, this person broke my arm, but I like took off one of their legs, therefore I win. And it's, yeah, like there's nobody won here. Like there was a kid with a broken arm and a dude that lost his like leg and a bunch of his groin. Like, yeah.
And so
it's just horrible all around.
Jermaine ends up being like this literal form of, yeah, this sort of ideology is kind of dangerous and sexy in a dangerous way, attractive in a dangerous way. But this is the reality of it, that your dad lost to Jermaine win, not really.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, like nobody won. There's just people in a lot of pain, and yeah, and like, you know, like Jermaine is clearly very damaged by like his entire childhood. But the idea of like, yeah, him claiming that he's won, like, I guess I don't blame him so much that he thinks he's won, because it's just clear he hasn't processed like that trauma and that pain of his life. But the general idea of people thinking, well, this person hurt me, but I hurt them way worse, is like, an eye for an eye just makes the whole world blind kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, so then we get into like a little bit of a talk about respect, and how like Moses like advises Jermaine to like treat Valentina with respect. And he's like, I will take that under advisement, Mr. Moses, sir. Jermaine replied in the tone of someone who was not taking what he was hearing seriously. And it's like the fact is like, he doesn't respect Moses, like, because again, he said he only respects 3 people, which is fucking Mia, his dad, and like his old gang leader. So like he's not respecting Moses, which means he's just like totally blanking his advice. And it's like Mia would kill him.
Yeah.
For like crossing a boundary that he is like getting close to crossing later on in this chapter. Like Mia would end his life. And the fact that he's like, and he respects Mia, so like he respects that she could do that, but he doesn't respect the people that works for her enough to listen to them. Which it's like, yeah, this is why. Well, I mean, this is a big part of why like you don't do respect based on like what people can do to you. I guess it's silly.
And in turn, it really emphasizes how much we've lost by losing Highland and Bolden. Like, this is not how they operated.
Yeah.
They did not need that sort of violent, like threat of violence to earn respect balance.
Yeah, well, I think I forgot to write this in the notes. So thank you for bringing that up. But there is like, because like we see with Tony, like all throughout the chapter, he's very much cooperating. Like he's under the threat of violence, therefore he's cooperating the whole time. And it's only at the end, after like he's been shown like the damage that has been done to his family by being so close to the Cavalcantis, where he's actually on side. He's no longer just on side because of the threat of violence. He's on side because he wants to help his family, and he can like gain something rather than just, not being tortured. And it's so sad because like that's what the Hearsts have lost in this last arc, basically. Like they've lost the people that are actually on side, that are actually loyal, that are willing to go the extra mile, and they're left with the kids who are dangerous and very violent and not professional.
And also Moses, who is here on a vendetta.
And Moses.
Who is not loyal Moses, to Mia, or like loyal to what Mia is doing exactly, but more loyal to the opportunity that Mia provides. Which is
loyal to his revenge, to his dead friends.
And like I'm not really sure that like you could put forward necessarily Highland and Bolden as the platonic ideal of the alternative of like some like the sort of loyal, like moral, like guided more by a mutual respect or something that doesn't require violence or respect of values. But it's definitely not how we're operating here. And I think that by the end of the chapter, Valentina has earned something that is like a superior sort of respect.
Yeah.
And because we have this theme throughout of each of the kids like jostling within their bounds, trying to like cross boundaries where they can, and Valentina trying to position herself to be worthy of their or to earn, whether worthy is the right word, their respect.
Yeah.
So what does she end up doing? She solves the case.
Yeah. Yeah, she fucking nails it.
But with as you were saying with Tony, the degree to which this man is useless.
Yeah, like at the start, it turns out I actually did have it in my notes, and it was my next thing down on the chronological beat. So it's hilarious that I forgot that I put it in my notes. But yeah, like Tony saying, like, there's no magic word I can give, no secret door, nothing like that. And like, he's right. There's no secret door that like can get them into the compound. But as he brings up at the end, he might have a way to move Davy out of the compound, and that's pretty fucking good. Yeah. Like, and that really is like the difference between like loyalty through fear and like loyalty through fucking having a good reason to be loyal, you know? And then I guess in my notes I wrote something kids versus Highlander. Yeah.
The essential dichotomy. He has the high ground.
Yes. He does have the high ground.
He's not driven by anger. He's going to unite the force, not destroy it. Anyway.
Anyway.
We mentioned last as we were learning about Davy and ballerinas, this possibility of Davy's first wife being the ballerina. Instead, that timeline gets a lot longer, a lot convoluted, and a lot darker.
Yeah, it's. I mean, she still could be, but
I should hope not.
Yeah,
because if the ballerina in question is the one that's in this quote,
yeah, it's not good. So he pursued an ex-classmate after she moved schools. He dropped in on her. Then when she rebuffed him, he assaulted her. And it's like, is this the ballerina? Like obviously it's fucking horrifying. But like we do know the ballerina moved countries. So did Davy like follow her to a different country, or was this just like another girl at his school that he became, he quote unquote fell in love with?
I think
in his own fucked version.
Sort of either way, the intent, because this suggestion works whether it is specifically the ballerina or a ballerina or some variation thereof.
Or anyone.
The way that Davy tells the story overlooks the fact that he has harmed someone massively in it. He says, "Oh, I was very infatuated, and like I saw the love of pain." And he doesn't then add to his telling of the story, which is why I acted on those urges with hostility and terror and awfulness. Like the way that he tells the story is something beautiful and sweet. It's a sort of horrible insight as to the depths behind the facades that Davy casts up, like just how long he has been at this for, especially like we really get a sense of time here, that this is not a surprise that his career has been to be this sort of like, so now, like to use Mia's terminology, dragon of all dragons, this hoarder of people as objects, this person that inflicts such violating harm. That was well alluded to. It could have been easily foreseen, if not in scale, then in nature.
Yes, absolutely. So. Oh, I guess this is one quote I really don't want to read out. It's like the discussion between Carson and Valentina, where it's, "I want Ripley to be okay. She was a good kid." And then I think Valentina responds with, "She was." And it's like, fuck Christ, guys. She's a good kid.
Yeah,
she's not dead.
They lose a lot of hope here, but
it breaks my heart. Like, this past tense just stands out so strongly, and it hurts so much.
I suppose it's
really
supposed to be a sort of operating from rock bottom situation of like, consider that even if this emblem of good, this like Ripley as the heart of the Hearst family, this sweet person that doesn't deserve anything bad and exists in this like the pearl at the center of this very messy clam. The purpose of having her in mind as past tense as though she were truly lost has the side effect of like all these decisions to try and decode Addie and also to give the kids space and to try and to figure out how to balance their very mangled spin their very mangled plates and keep it all in balance is coming from a place of like of that like having lost what Ripley represents, having like on Geo's level having like lost that innocence. So it's a horrible thing, but it expands out into like saying even when you are in that rock bottom place, these are the right things to do. I will leave this brief glimpse of Ben's contribution to the chapter to you because I know you so love Ben.
My favorite character. But he says that, like, you know, he convinced her to not maim Addie. And she responds, I convinced me. You were one source of input among many. You don't get the credit. It would have fucked everything up. Tony would be kicking a fuss. We'd be fighting every step of the way. And she loses value as a hostage. And so, like, I know she does, like, comment, like, oh, yeah, a lot of that was for the sake of the kids, which is, like, you know, it would have fucked everything up. Tony would be kicking up a fuss. And she loses value. Like, I don't think Valentina cares that much about those things. I think that's all for the kids. But, I mean, like, they are both right. Like, is the thing. Like, I'm not going to say that, like, Ben is completely wrong here. As much as I'd like
I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of you.
But I mean, like, it does it does speak to Ben's perspective that, like, these are all horrible criminals. I am the good moral person, and me being around made it so that this girl did not, like, walk down the road of the horrible criminal more. But I mean, a lot of it was Highland. Like, it was Highland's speech that she didn't internalize at the time, but, like, with a bit of space and a bit of time and a bit of spending time with Ben, it's really, like, helped her, like, really internalize it to the point that she doesn't want to harm Addie. So I think I do want to be fair to Ben, and I do want to say that I think probably if her and Ben hadn't spent time together in his chapter, I think she probably would have gotten in that van, and I think she might have either fucking killed Addie or maimed her more.
As a slightly different perspective on why Ben would say this, I think there's another element of, like, Ben, like, having gone through a lot recently and being in a very bad place, needing to find something of like evidence of his impact, you know, of like something that he's done right and well, and that the good that he's contributed. Because otherwise, the alternative is like because he's reckoning with this idea that Carson and Mia have been hammering into him, that somehow all of this is specifically his fault, or that he needs to pay extra mind to the consequences of his actions. And of course, there is this like very big detail to the truth of that, or the degrees of truth to that of Ripley specifically having been lost to specifically Davy's clutches. And from that, like, reckoning with all of that and trying to come to terms with it, I can understand Ben going to, like, looking around the room and seeing someone that has changed their behavior because of what they've seen of him. And of course, seeing is the primary way that he influences the world. So the way I read it was that like Ben was trying to find some reason to continue or to apply himself when what he would really prefer to be doing with what's going through his head is probably just to sit down for a bit and have a really good cathartic sulk. When things go
Yeah.
that wrong, everyone needs a good sulk. So
Yeah. Look, I
I
like that interpretation.
mm. We get to the investigation in Eddie's room next.
Yeah. And then, there's this great moment of like small characterization that I really thought it was really cool and it was really fun. Where Valentina is saying like there was just enough space cleared for careful mouse movement, but Valentina couldn't imagine using the computer much without knocking bottles over onto the floor. And it's like, that's such a fun little characterization of Addie as someone who's like super careful and very precise, and like it also really tracks with like what we're about to learn in a minute about like the way that Davy is like trying to instill in her like the like kind of traits that Davy is trying to instill in her as he's grooming her. Like I thought it was like a really good like little short moment to just note like, oh, like here is a great little character beat for this character who we have not really seen inside the head of, and like really tells us a bit more about them. And then obviously it also then ties into like the revelation that we're about to have with Davy.
You pulled this the rhythm of Addie, like something that's emblematic of Addie's constant needling of Valentina.
Oh yeah. The Gio, look at me. Valentina did her best not to, and it's like, it's so brilliant. Like the way that Addie is like trying to like wear down this hard line that Valentina has put into her identity, and like how being around someone that's like trying to put out the same vibes as Davy, especially with like the like harsh like short sentences of like, Gio, look at me. I can 100% see that as something Davy would have said like with an angry tone, and then gone back to all smiles. But like, the way that just being around someone that is trying to be similar to that, and that someone that has hurt her from her past and is like really blurring the lines in her own identity. Oh, I don't know. It's so good. And like pushing her away from who she wants to be and back to who she was, back to the kind of person that would jump on that bed with a box knife and cut open Addie's face a second time. It's like it's really like super emotional chapter, super intense. And then so we get a bit of a chat with Michelle, and I really love this section where she's talking about the other kids, and she's like, they're my home, but they're none of that other stuff, which is like, like good for her, and healthy and loving. So when I'm done, I've got to go, and then I'll spend the rest of my life aching for home again, trying to find something like it that's not going to fuck me up. And it's like, fuck, this is just like heartbreak, pure and simple. Like she's so cognizant of like what her little found family is for her, like the way that Carson was talking about it a few chapters ago, and like what it means for her and her mental health, to be around them and be with them, and how she knows that she can't do it long term because she will turn into like a fucking monster.
Well, not necessarily a monster, but someone that she just doesn't want to be.
Her mum basically, and how she's terrified about that. And knows that she can't do it. She can't become that person. She wants to find something that feels like home, that's actually good for her. And it's heartbreaking. I don't like. I don't know. There's just so much sadness in Michelle, and like I love that she's so like cognizant of like what she's like, and like the things that are like really like bouncing around her head. And then later, like we see, that like Carson was right. Like she does have a short fuse because like, Addie calls her a slut and she beats the shit out of her. And it's like, she is both of these people. Like she is the very short fuse, like trying not to blow up at a moment's notice, but also she's considering what it's like for her to be around people that are really like trying to repress the person that she wants to be.
I like this notion of home as what is easiest and what is simple. Of like the not necessarily a place that improves you, but a place that lets you really rest. Especially because the thing, there's this line way down. We're going to get into the section with the emails next.
Yes.
But Addie's eyes were on the image. Addie sighed, and she seemed more relaxed than Valentina had ever seen her, like she could fall asleep. So the core of home for Addie, when it's found, like the truth of her having been this, like having been in her mind a disciple of Davy, like it's the student and someday lover, and all this mythology that she's built up around his manipulation. That's at her home. That's the part of her that is easiest and simple and restful. And Michelle is in a place that Valentina was recently, of being aware of that, of a dark, like central, restful home, something that's easy but not gratifying or nurturing. It's something that you fall asleep into and become like get caught in the waves of. And the step along, like Valentina's all the way out of it. It can look in on her, like that sense of home, that dark urge that Davy had tried to impart, and act against it. And like her internal like opposite is the hugging of the maimed person in Davy Jones's locker.
You're really proud of that one.
I am. People liked it, and that meant a lot to me.
People did.
I put a lot of thought into it. I should hope.
I mean, it's good.
I should hope effort begets quality, but they end up being this sliding scale of Addie is basically in a way fallen asleep. She's given in to a satisfying but not like not in a good way, not in a developing or expanding way, but a reducing and thinning out and unconscious way. A dark home that Valentina in turn has gotten out of. The way I think there is more to say about the kids. I think it requires like really getting into why they talk about the gay bomb and like the idea of a cultural like shift as people are given the opportunity to blame something on something else so that they can be more authentically themselves. But let's get into these emails, because like the dark heart of the chapter I think is important to chart those veins.
Yeah. So just a quote here from the book. I don't know why I said it like that. Anyway, it's just a quote here. She skimmed more, stopping only to glance at words or catch the texture of a sentence. Nothing sexual, nothing romantic, but she could see the progression in other directions. And it's like, reading this, it's like, this is perfect Wild Boy horror. Like, you are piecing together exactly what has happened at the same time that Valentina is. The puzzle is falling into place, piece by fucking piece, as you read each word. And then at like, basically it's this, around the same time that she says, he groomed you, you're like, you are thinking, oh my God, he groomed her.
It's simultaneous. Yeah. As she says it, so you understand.
Wild Boy really like fucking nailed the timing. Like, it's it's just, it's horror. Like it's like you've got that sinking feeling in your chest as you're reading through and you're going, oh no, oh God. And then, And of course, Addie responds, because she's being groomed, she responds, fuck off. It was never like that. It was love, actual love. He saw me for who I was. I saw him. Neither of us flinched away. I was more like a protege. And it's like, oh God. Like, it's so, yeah, like this fucking damaged girl, like throwing herself into more situations where she can damage others and cozying up to a monster to do it, who then goes on to groom her into crossing more lines, doing more damaging things, and like, you know, you've got like the undercurrent of tension between them of breaking the rules together. Like, he knows what he's fucking doing,
Yeah.
and she does not understand at all what she's getting into.
I was
Like, he knows he's like pulling on her strings by doing this.
I was really put in the mind of people that like the sort of serial killer groupies.
I can see.
Which is a very particular round of like Tumblr user, I suppose, in particular. Of projecting onto a horrible, horrible man the idea that you're the exception.
You're the special one.
And what that really is gratifying is this wish to feel important and special and valued.
Yeah.
And he like Valentina says that there's nothing romantic or sexual in the text. Like the emails don't specifically say I love you. They don't specifically say let's run away together. But what they have done is give her this space to infer what she really wants, and so Davy has given her this territory to turn him into an icon for her to worship and obey. And most of the way that he has done that is just by feeding her worst instincts and preying on someone that doesn't have alternatives. Because it's
preying on someone stuck between the two worlds,
and it's especially in the quality of what he is making her do is doing most of the work for him. Where if he invites her to do crimes, then she can't seek help because she'd have to admit to the crimes first. So this intrinsic blackmail, this I don't remember what exactly it's called, but it's a thing that cults do relatively often. It's like in hazing rituals, it's the kind of thing that happens where a person can't admit to what is happening to them because it would require admitting what they had done. So this moment of relief for Addie, or like she feels she could fall asleep, is finally the truth has come out. I get to be honest about what I really feel, which is all of this mythos, all these things that she's developed to get what she needs out of this an incredibly hostile, parasitic relationship. Tony, her dad, he reads all of this. It can't surprise him because he has helped Davy become this monster in many ways. He's helped them, the Cavalcades, through a lot. And
he's helped Davy through a lot of like really horrible things that he has done. Like, he knows who Davy is.
This quote that you've pulled of I want to die, he said, and I can't because she needs me. Addie said something from the room behind him. He looked sadder hearing that. We don't need to know what it is because like Addie is at this point like a fomented Davy poison. You know, she's just been drip fed this snake's venom, it's maybe she said something cutting. Now I need you, or like I always needed you, or I never needed you, or
it would be better if you did die.
Or
like something.
And none of those are more powerful than the suggestion that any of them were said. So Wildbow just lets us fill in the blanks. Because
and it's
we've already had a whole chapter of solving mystery. We can do the rest.
Like you can see that it is like it's the rejection. Like it is. Like you don't need to know how it was a rejection, but it is a rejection of like him offering parental love and safety, and she says essentially no. I don't want that. I want this fucked up fucking quote unquote relationship that I've like been groomed into. And it's just like, it's perfect horror and it's perfect heartbreak, and it's just, they just intertwine in this moment and your heart just fucking breaks for this guy.
And it's wild, you know, because the love that Addie thinks she has, I'm not quite certain how well it matches up with Davy's model of love. I mean, it is based on violence and destruction.
Yeah.
But Addie doesn't really recognize necessarily that she's also been destroyed in many ways or violated. And like maybe that's part of so what she is calling love is what Davy would agree is love, but they're working by two very different definitions. It's awful. There's this moment after after Tony has changed sides, which is, you could do the symbolism, but sometimes the writing itself is the poetry. You just kind of get it.
Well, yeah, look, it's interesting that you bring that up because, so like the house flashed bright, everything thudding into motion as air conditioning came on, appliances started running and all the lights turned on, the alarm system beeped with a high pitch. And it's like, this is such a conflicting moment to me because it's like, it is this flash of hope, like the power is coming back, like things are coming back to how they should be. So, you know, there is like that flash, it is a burst of hope and you're like, oh, thank God, like, you know, the violence in the streets might start calming down, etc. But like we had it laid out really well last chapter that the chance that we had was in the darkness. Like Ripley and the others had to be out of there by the time the power came back on, and all those cameras and microphones are coming online and they're fucked. And it's like there's just so many layers of meaning to this one thing where I'm like, I'm not even sure how to like properly interpret this because it feels so like power on, like the normalcy and the good of that, but then like the power being on means that those that are, you know, in power, like the powers that be are like reintroducing themselves, reasserting their control, and like we are against the powers that be. You know, like I don't know. So I'm not sure how to read this. I'm so torn on this one, and I'm like, I keep on going back and forward on whether it's supposed to be hopeful or we're supposed to like slightly despair at this. Well, I don't know.
Here's the thing. The first thing that happens, sort of the first thing, an immediate consequence of this is that Mia gets the message from Ripley. Because Mia, our techno savant, is back online. And what defines Mia? A sense of panic and paranoia constantly. Her grasp of like the present and the future is defined by the alarm system like suddenly roaring to life and beeping on. And like her sense of hope is imbricated with her sense of fear, you know? So like if the question is it supposed to be normalcy returns, hope returns, powers that be are expressing their power and asserting their control. So is it panic or is it joyful? It's both. It's Mia getting back on the scene, and we're wondering, like, over the course of this whole arc, where's Mia's perspective? Like, when are we going to get to see what's going on in her head? And I mean, she's got her power back, so presumably it's pretty soon, or at least we're going to see even more of her, as we saw at the beginning of the story. And there is a very literal revelation here of like the mystery being solved, of course. But there's also a very literal empowerment here. Like the light of knowledge means that you can inform yourself more. And the first thing we know, the first thing we get to learn is that Ripley is the dragon's on the bookshelf. The Ripley is in the vents. And that is that a tilt toward the hero's side in my mind that is going to benefit more our allies than our enemies. So
I hope
maybe it's
so.
my anxiety disorder. Maybe it's because I am also always afraid all the time, and I've never felt a good thing without having a bit of fear involved. But
Relatable.
the like to me, it's mostly just loud and clear in terms of the message is it's loud and clear.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, there's a lot of things to be thinking about with the power coming back on and what that means for the story. And yeah, look, I hope we're in Mia's head soon. I miss Mia's head. It's fun. Yeah. Okay, so then like Mia gives Valentina a hug and she goes, "Isn't this home? Isn't this good? She'd really needed a hug like this." And it's like, darling, that was Michelle's point. Yes, it's good for you. This is fantastic for you. It's not home. Home for you is not hugs from your mum and love. It's strict and it's distant and it's not being able to talk to your brother about things because there are maids nearby who are going to fucking report back. After that, well, not after that, but I would like to note that Mia, Carson leave with Andre and they sure are conspicuously missing someone when they come back, huh?
Yeah, poor Andre. Sucks to suck, I guess.
Yeah, I guess they really worked out their stress when they left. Yeah.
Just
Oof.
a reminder that these are bad people.
Yeah, they're not good people.
But
yeah.
you know, like I think that's maybe part of why Valentina has this isn't this home, isn't this good? She really needed a hug. Bit of like, why isn't Mia and Carson satisfying this need exactly? Because yes, it is providing something that she hadn't been getting at home, but maybe it shouldn't be home.
Yeah. And I was trying to think about what home could be for Valentina. And like the only thing that I had like an inkling of is like home for Valentina honestly could be university in Europe, you know? I don't know if that's what it's going to be for her, but it could be.
Maybe.
It could be being away from all this fucking horror.
Like a fresh start is not necessarily not a possibility for her. It may be very difficult. Certainly, there's this fear that Tony has, and that Mia confirms, or I think it was Valentina that confirmed, rather, that escaping Davy as he is now is very unlikely. And
yeah.
So he really has to be sorted out before anyone gets their real opportunities to get away. But it could be done.
Hopefully.
As far as growing goes, as far as getting out of her shell, as far as not really having these negative inputs that like quiet her introspection and stop her from thinking reflexively, I am presently remembering a model of thinking that I think her name's pronounced Arendt, Hannah Arendt, about during the Nuremberg trials, about like a model of thinking that requires self-introspection and the necessity of like you're taking moral responsibility for your actions even if you're following orders. That like this is not necessarily the place for that degree of lucidity that Michelle emphasizes as something that she definitely doesn't get when she's with the kids. So is this Valentina's new home? Is it somewhere else? I think that she could certainly find somewhere better than this. Mia and Carson are still are still in parallel with Davy, and I think there's been a couple of times where Carson and Davy's similarities have been put forward. Like Ripley recalling Carson in her chapter, and Davy referring to him as a degenerate criminal but still respecting him, them having a chat very early in the story.
He's got the zazz.
Zazz. Quick mentions and corrections because we only have one for this week. Limeboy on the Discord specifies that Zazz could be pizzazz, in the same way that Riz is charisma. And, you know, I guess. But
I like it.
if you're telling an 11-year-old that, wow, you really inherited that zazz from your father, that deranged criminal, I feel like the word's never going to be the same.
Anyway, sorry. Go on, please.
Um, do we want to talk themes?
Right. Yes. Let's talk some themes.
I think there's a big obvious one here, which is that Mia and Carson have voiced a belief in second chances, that they believe that's what they work for. Whether or not it is something that they always work for or have a bit of hypocrisy about,
Debatable.
exceptions, debatable. And then we have Davy's model of love as love despite, and love that is really based in the destruction and pain that goes into it, the sort of pride that his siblings have in their pain, and that the loyalty that comes from they need to get to have meeting, and so doubling down. We've talked about how Valentina is a sort of synthesis of that, or like working on a synthesis of that, where like loving despite or second chances despite of like Rick really even Addie, who is someone that she has every reason to deeply hate, whether or not she's objectively guilty, whether or not she's objectively worthy of that hate. Even then, Valentina pursues understanding and eventually through it forgiveness of what Addie has done. And so maybe if that is what is required of the rest of the cast, or at least this is the thesis that we should be taking away having read these characters, that the places that they fall short, the places that they don't quite match to their morals is this question of despite, of how many exceptions can you make, or how committed to the notion of what you believe in are you to pull through even when there are subjective obstacles or objective obstacles to actually pulling through on that faith and belief.
Yeah.
Bold and specific predictions.
Let's do it. So my bold and specific prediction for today is they've left Andre outside in the car as a dark mirror of what happened with Camellia 10 years ago.
And we know this is true because we'll never see Andre again.
Yeah, exactly.
I appreciate how specific it is.
Thank you. It's pretty bold as well.
I would like to put forward that when Addie realizes that Davy doesn't really love her, or at least not in the way that she wants to be loved, she and Val will team up to slash his face instead. And that's poetic justice, which is definitely what the whole story has been about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like this BS prediction. I think it's fun and is not at all horrifying, and would definitely not signal a real backslide of any of our characters.
What? Sabotage of a story's values and message in the very final moments. That never happens.
That'd be crazy.
As for our discussion question, last week we asked,
what unlikely skill do you have that would help in a situation like Nat and Rips? So 40i2 said they're afraid they don't have any mechanical skills that would help them escape, and arguing with Davy would only make things worse, so they'd be doomed. Which I guess if you're being honest,
it's the most real answer.
I feel like we're all doomed in that scenario, but you know.
I feel like Davy demonstrates pretty well that you can do everything right and he will still attack you because he's that sort of person.
Oh, yes.
I appreciate Beligtal Dante's answer. He said that, I don't think any of my skills would be particularly useful in this scenario. Probably the best I can hope to accomplish is to be the large, slow-moving target that keeps the bad guys occupied while the protagonists get away. And like, see, that there's a sort of iteration of 40i2 of, I'll try and do something good with how ineffective I'm going to be in this horrible, horrible scenario where you can't have a right answer.
Yeah. I like that. This one's you as well. Go nuts.
Only a Sandwich has said that I've never really thought about it, but I think I could hack a keypad with a generous heap of luck. I won't go into too much detail, but there's a bunch of places in the install of these kinds of systems where if you cut corners, there's basically no way to find out unless you're very well versed in it. And the initial install is so ridiculously frustrating in so many cases that I could see a contractor easily cutting those corners or even leaving their own back door in case they get on the wrong side of Davy. For example, that keypad probably hosts an admin website that nobody knows about except the install technician, and isn't accessible unless you know exactly where to go for it. They can lock it down, sure, but if nobody knows about it, and it's not even accessible via the normal LAN, much less the internet, there's not much incentive or payoff to going the extra mile. Of course, this necessitates access to a computer with an Ethernet port and an Ethernet cable, but hey, I said generous heap of luck.
Yeah, I like that answer. That's some real good nerd shit right there.
I have learned something today, so thank you, Only a Sandwich.
Yeah. Now I'm very glad I get to read out this one because this one's my favorite. So from Sympathy for a Chord, they have said they have really steady hands, so they could see it giving them an advantage in lockpicking, pickpocketing, or crafting tools / weapons / mechanisms from scraps. It could also help them hold their arms very still, so Davy can make a clean cut.
A lot of realists in the audience.
Oh, yeah, I like that one.
Cyrano de Bergerac said that their excellent table manners could help prevent them from being threatened with cannibalism.
Yeah, good answer.
I wonder if, hypothetically, having excellent table manners would lead you to be invited to cannibalism under the wrong circumstances. But,
I could see it, yeah.
Whether Davy, not just suggested that the arm eating because he thought that would be, a torturous and awful thing to do, or if he maybe just really likes the arm meat and is himself a big fan of eating human flesh, unclear. Could go either way.
Shout out to Mystery of the Druids. I think we all know that Detective Halligan has excellent table manners, and that's why he eats somebody.
I understand these
that's
words.
A very specific and niche reference.
And this is Editing Bay VV saying that Coblin in the Discord answered, "Side consequence of studying biomedical science is I end up seeing a lot of videos and pictures of medical gore. In Rip's scenario, I could totally abstract myself and view it through that lens, excitedly pointing out the various veins, muscles, and bodily reactions to amputation, or talking about various treatment options like autologous transplants or biomimicry and prosthesis, etc., until I'm inevitably killed by Davy for not shutting up. I think you actually would get hired because it sounds like you're very well qualified to work for him. And I mean that as a compliment, but now that I've said it out loud, it sounds very evil."
Our answers for this week is my answer is I'm actually pretty good at keeping my head calm in a crisis, and I have pretty extensively worked at talking people through very traumatic situations. So I think I would be good at talking people through what's happening. I'm not going to be able to save us, but we can chat about it.
A better job than Natalie in terms of
yes, I would like to think so.
Though the bar low and rising, she's getting there.
Yeah, she is.
I've written down I'm great at yapping, so I could definitely volunteer myself as first victim to buy everyone else more time. But in hindsight, I remembered a time that I've dislocated my thumb to pull it out of handcuffs. It just wasn't for anything important. I was in an escape room and I was really bored because no one was solving the puzzle in time. So I just slept out to the best of my ability. And so it's such a niche skill that I fully forgot that it could ever be useful. But at very least, I can be standing before I get slapped across the face.
Perfect. I like it. So this week's discussion question is...
What's a time you learned something about someone that completely reframed your understanding of them?
Oh, such a good question. I really like this one. I like that you came up with
it. We put a lot of thought into it. We were going back and forth. And obviously, when we hit with a big moment like this, the sort of discussion questions that you can have slim down. You can maybe ask something that's off topic. You can ask something that's off of a very small key detail. But I feel like this is a way to get at the heart of this chapter,
Yeah.
what really is revealed here. I hope that there's stories that people are willing to share that aren't just like, well, one time I learned someone really sucked and they really sucked, because that happens
Wow.
quite often.
It does. That's going to be my answer for as a yeah. That's going to be my answer next week. Okay, so that's the end of our episode.
That's our show.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody. And remember to check out Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. This is his 600 thread email chain. We're just getting groomed.
Who's the monster now? I offered to stop you. I did say, Kip, that I think you didn't have to. But
I know, but it's so good. How can I not write this one?
Well, I don't feel too bad about the lending a hand comment anymore. I feel like
you should not.
I feel like we might have pushed the Overton window in terms of what we can say for these signups.
Maybe,
but if you,
this one was pretty sketchy.
If you'd like to see more terrible sign-offs and more dedicated analysis, please give us a rating and a review on the podcatcher of your choice.
And if you want to chat to us about the show, to disparage our sign-offs or follow along with live reads, check out our channel on the Doof Media Discord. Find the invite link at doofmedia.com/discord.
Bye for now.
And bye-bye.